one side or the other. Banfield starts now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's Monday. It's great to have you here. Busy, busy day. In the Delphi murder case, we were waiting. And if you know this case, you've been waiting right along with me. Not, a couple years, which is normal for a murder case. More like 7. We have been waiting for upwards of 7 years to find out what really happened and what this man is really facing. And today, we might have wanted to wait longer because it was really hard to hear. The stuff that was released in court today in the way of graphic photographs of the bodies of 2 little girls who were murdered in Delphi, Indiana, was enough to send a courtroom into gasps. Can't imagine what that was like for the jury because they have to look close. They have to look at those pictures. And when you see 2 cute little kids like this, the way those jurors had to look at them, you can never, ever unsee that. Guess who else was in the courtroom? Their families. Their families had to see that today because it is part of the case against Richard Allen. His mom, Richard Allen's own mom, was so affected by those photos in the courtroom today, she cried too. I have a full report, not just about that, but also other stuff that happened. Like the crime scene is nothing like we thought it was. It is like mountain climbing. And we had someone who actually went out and retraced those steps. You're going to hear all about it. Then did you hear about I know you've heard about the Broadway hit Hamilton, right? That is such a big show. Broadway shows are big, right, when they're big, but Hamilton is the biggest of all of them. And one of the stars of the show, so proud to have made it to that big pinnacle in his career, has disappeared, like vanished. And when I say vanished, 18 days he's been gone. And his family is really, really worried. Zelig Williams, great social media profile, $1 million smile, fantastic actor. And Hamilton. Tonight, his mother is in virtual agony over this. Take a look.
I just want Zelig to come home. He all I got. He all I got. He all I got.
That trauma is so palpable. And when she says, "You're all I've got, Zelig," it's because she's already lost 2 daughters. She's going to join me on the program tonight with a brand new clue, what Zelig was holding as he walked out the door the last time she saw him before he disappeared. And it is a big clue that's coming as well. And then there was quite a star witness, I suppose you could say, or star attraction in the murder case against Sarah Boone today. The girl who wiped out 9 lawyers finally went to trial because of the allegation she zipped her boyfriend, George Torres, into a suitcase and then just taunted him as he begged for his life. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't even expand his chest to beg strongly enough. But she videotaped it. That's not in contest. She videotaped it and taunted him as he basically died in that suitcase on that floor. And today that suitcase was hauled out in court and it was opened up in front of the jury. You can't tell from this view, but you can really tell from that view. That man was in that tiny case. Looked a lot bigger in the room. It looked in the living room, it looked a lot bigger, but in the courtroom, look at this. Can you imagine watching this live? This is the actual murder weapon. A man fit into that? Because as it turned out, no, he didn't fit. He was so jammed in there and so constricted, he couldn't even expand his lungs to breathe. He could barely expand his lungs to say the word, Sarah. Sarah, please. So that case made it into the courtroom today. I'm going to show you a lot more of this moment when they opened it for the jury, all that coming in just a moment. I want to start here, though. Nobody likes to work on weekends. But if you are sequestered on a jury, which means you can't go home and you can't talk to your family, you can't be on your phone, you can't watch the news, and you are 100 miles from your home, you really don't have much else to do on a weekend, right? So yeah, probably preferable to work every single day of the week and get jury duty over with and get home to your family. And so the Delphi murder trial was in session on Saturday, and the lawyers were filing motions yesterday. And I'm going to catch you up on all that in just a minute, but we really need to talk about today. Because today, the jurors saw what this horrific case is really all about. The murders of two young tweens, Ashleigh Williams and her best friend Libby German, 13 and 14 years old. Their murders were so bizarre and so grotesque that the state kept the details a secret for 7 years, right up until opening statements. But today, those details took the form of 43 crime scene photos, and the jury had to look at all of them. Libby's body was completely nude, covered in blood. Her throat had been slit. She's a child. Blood all over the ground where they found her. Abby's throat also slit. Blood everywhere. Her body also on the ground, but she strangely was wearing Libby's clothing. And it wasn't just the jurors, and the lawyers, and the defendant Richard Allen who saw these pictures. It was their families as well in the courtroom. And they audibly gasped and they cried when the photos came out. And even the mom of the defendant Richard Allen cried. She cried. On Saturday, the jurors heard about the search, where and how Libby and Abby were eventually found. And it turns out it was a hell of a lot harder than we thought, and maybe a lot luckier that they got found at all. Their bodies were down a rugged embankment half a mile away from where the girls were last seen alive on the railway bridge. The first sight of either of them was actually Libby's tie-dyed T-shirt, snagged on the branches in the creek. Bodies were covered in what appeared to be carefully arranged sticks. But the ritual killing theory that the defense had really hoped to advance in this case, that was barred by the judge. So they didn't talk about that. The jurors did get Sunday off, but the defense did not. They filed a motion on Sunday against that now infamous video, the one that Libby captured on her phone right before she was murdered. In the video, a man appears to be ordering the girls down the hill.
Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill.
The defense says any expert analysis of that so-called down the hill video would be, quote, completely subjective and speculative. So it sounds a little like the defense doesn't want any experts suggesting what's actually being said on that tape. No ruling yet. Nothing that we have, but we'll keep you posted on it. I do want to bring in our eyes and ears in the courtroom. The cameras and other devices are barred, but my guests have seats. Bob Motta is a criminal defense attorney, and he's the host of the Defense Diaries podcast. And Lindsay Holler is a producer on my new upcoming podcast, Drop Dead Serious. And she was just at the scene of the crime. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for doing this, especially after such a hard day. Okay, Bob, I'm going to start with you. You're a defense attorney. That whole suppression effort to get the down the hill analysis, clear that up for me. They're not saying they can't play the down the hill video. They just don't want anybody to get up and stand and give their 2 cents about what they think is happening or what's being said on that video. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they want to keep it out in general, but as a fallback, they'll take that position. I mean, the reality is that you can't see the actor, meaning the potential perpetrator's mouth moving. Like if you're looking at the video, I've always wondered that. I'm like, how are we just assuming that this sound came from this video? So what I'm suspecting is that they're going to make an argument that the sound can't be proven that it actually came from that video. You know, because in Baldwin,
I think that sounds fair. But trust me, like I just cannot in a million years imagine a court case, a trial where murder victims were able to capture a glimpse of a killer before they're murdered and it is suppressed. I just would have a hard time believing that those jurors aren't going to see that video that we're playing right now.
Oh, it's coming in. There's no chance that Gull's keeping it out. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to come in. They have to make the record.
I just needed you to get me off the ledge on that one, because when I saw suppression, in motion in limine, I just started to shake. Okay, so Lindsay, you are such an intrepid reporter. You you left the courtroom after all of those terrible details on Saturday, knowing like how treacherous the place where the bodies were located. I always assumed they were just sort of on a trail, you know, but you went out there and you almost needed like hiking sticks and climbing gloves to get up these embankments. Like it was not what we expected. Can you take me there and describe it?
Well, like you said, I too thought it was a path, and I've been trying to make sense of the timing of all of this. And it was absolutely not a path or trail at this point where they were forced down a hill and ultimately where their bodies ended up. It was not a path. It was extremely treacherous. It was steep. There's branches. There's no barreling through. This wouldn't have been quick. This would have taken a while just to get through it.
So we're actually looking at your video as you were making the journey and following their path. You forged through that river as well. And in our pictures, it looks kind of shallow. But I think you mentioned to me, you were like waist deep.
Yeah, so it's shallow in some spots. So, I mean, eventually I was at a certain point where I had to keep going to get where I needed to go. And so the water did come up to my midsection in some places. If I would have gone in other sections, it would have been much deeper. But it's not just a short creek.
I mean, I can't imagine what these poor kids were going through, being marched through this extraordinarily difficult, you know, as they get more and more remote. Just hell and terrorizing. Bob, the discussion about the bodies with the sticks, I'm not sure what your view was, if you got a clear view of those pictures. I keep envisioning like small patterns of sticks that maybe could be a pattern or might have just fallen, but are they covered? Can you describe for me, are they covered in sticks? And then the bigger question, add to that, the sticks were not tested for DNA. What on earth happened?
Yeah. I had an excellent view. So essentially, there was kind of a thought process going into the trial whether or not we were going to see the crime scene photos and the photos of the girls, which were devastating. It was a really tough day in court today. I got a very good view of it. They're showing them on an 85-inch monitor towards Nick McClelland, the prosecutor's table. And it was pretty clear to me that the sticks were placed purposefully on the girls. We're talking there were like 3 or 4 that were placed in what looked like an asterisk on Abby. And then Libby had a large limb that looked to be going over her left shoulder that was probably about 7 to 8 feet long. And I'm talking about a thick tree limb. And then she looked to have some other just a few sticks. Like, we're not talking about 20, 30 sticks. These definitely didn't fall off the trees under the girls. They were certainly placed there. I guess the argument's going to be, you know, were they placed in order to just kind of try to make the girls harder to see, or did they have significance? As we all know, Gull's not allowing any kind of significance argument to come in as far as the defense goes. But the way that I saw it, they certainly seem to be purposefully placed. For what reason, I don't know. But as far as the crime scene investigation, when that came out during the testimony with one of the CSI guys, that they decided not to bring any of those sticks with them to have them tested for DNA. It was probably the most kind of exciting little mini battle on a cross-examination, because Baldwin, one of the defense attorneys, asked him, all right, look, well, you know, you didn't think that maybe there could be some evidentiary value to having those sticks tested? And the guy's like, well, no. He's like, well, Baldwin said, well, you know, a human being used their hand to pick those sticks up and place them on the girls, right? And the witness said, yes. He said, well, you know, he could have been wearing gloves. He says, okay, well, was the suspect wearing gloves? And the witness said, I have no idea. Baldwin said, exactly. That's why you get them tested. So they end up going back on March 3rd. Remember, the crime took place on February 13th of 2017. They go back March 3rd and collect the sticks, claiming that they know where the sticks were and that they're the same sticks, which is, you know, like anybody who's followed this case knows that people were in those woods after they cleared that crime scene all the time.
No,
so
no kidding. You can't go out into the That is insane. I mean, that's going to be ripe terrain for the defense to mine for sure.
Definitely.
I want to ask you, Lindsay, about another issue. You know, the murder charge, we get that, but there's no sex assault charges. And I just can't understand, with a naked child with her throat slit and the other child who clearly had been naked, because how could she have gotten into Libby's clothes? Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes. Why is there no talk about sexual assault, or have I just missed something?
You haven't missed anything, Ashleigh. In fact, that was one of the defense questions under cross-examination today was, just to be clear, Richard Allen's DNA was nowhere here, and the answer was no.
I mean, but what about the fact that was there a rape kit? Do we know if there's evidence that was collected? Did they do that?
I believe the people that testified today, those officers, they did not actually conduct the rape kit themselves, but they said that they were aware that one was had. We haven't heard quite yet the results from that, but no, we have not heard anything about any type of sexual assault.
It just makes you wonder, if they're not testing the sticks, did anybody even look for fiber or hair or anything like that? It's just very frustrating. But Bob Motta and Lindsay Haller, I am so glad I had you, because without the cameras in the courtroom, it's very frustrating. There's just not a lot of transparency in the prosecution of this case, and it's important. So I'm going to turn to you again. Thank you both so much for this.
Thank you.
We're always here for you, Ashleigh.
Thank you. Thanks,
I
Ash.
so appreciate it. Okay. Keep the phone close. Thanks, guys. Still to come on this program. He made his mark on Broadway in arguably one of the greatest musicals of all time. But where on earth is Zelig Williams now? He vanished while home in South Carolina, but that was 18 days ago, after a strange report of a car crash that never even happened, which makes this mystery even more bizarre. Zelig's family joins me live to sort through the mystery next. Talent, drive, and luck took Zelig Williams from the heart of South Carolina all the way to Broadway. And it wasn't just Broadway, but he made it to the hit of the decade, Hamilton. And while a lot of people in his position might forget where they came from, Zelig did not forget where he came from. And he came home recently to teach a class and to see his family. And tonight, that family is begging the public for help. 2.5 weeks after Zelig, known to his loved ones as Z, vanished. So here is where the mystery begins. He was last seen leaving his mother's house in Columbia, South Carolina, the morning of October 3rd. His mom says in his hand was one of his promotional headshots. You know, the photos that lots of actors have, 8x10 sometimes they call them. Later that day, 3 of his friends got an SOS alert on their phones saying that Zelig's car had crashed. But the car had not crashed. The car was fine. It was found 2 days later, 20 miles away, perfectly intact, no crash. It was parked near a hiking and biking trail near Congaree National Park and the famous Palmetto Trail. And it's not just Zelig's real family that's hurting tonight, it's his showbiz family hurting as well. Zelig toured with the actor Hugh Jackman back in 2019, and the other day, Hugh Jackman posted something on his social media. Said, "Zelig, we love you and are praying for your safe return." I don't know if you've noticed this, but TikTok has been like blowing up with Zelig's disappearance and the mystery surrounding it. Take a look.
Where is Zelig Williams? Zelig Williams is a Broadway dancer who went missing earlier this month.
This young man is missing in South Carolina under mysterious circumstances.
He was last seen on October 3rd, and his family filed a missing persons report on October 4th.
Zelig Williams has been living with his mom in Columbia, South Carolina since the summer.
Earlier this year, in a Facebook post, Zelig appeared to be either offering or searching for a, quote, safe community to share and open up. He ended his post by saying, "I value mental health and support understanding self from a biblical standpoint." I'm pleased now to be joined by Zelig's mom, Kathy Williams, and his cousin, Mioka Corbett Jacobs. Thank you to both of you. And I'm so incredibly sorry that you are going through this. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your shoes right now. Mioka, maybe I can start with you. Is there any update at all that you've been given, either from the police or from your own investigations?
No, the only updates we have are from leads that we might get that don't pan out to be Zelig. People having sightings of people that may look like Z, but don't turn out to be Z.
And Kathy, I mentioned it earlier. I'll repeat it. This is incredibly heartbreaking for you. When you gave that news conference and said he's all you've got, I learned then that you had lost 2 daughters as well. So my heart just absolutely breaks for you. Can you walk me through that last time that you saw Zelig, the last things that he said to you, and that clue that he's holding an 8x10 photo in his hand?
Well, it started out around 2:30 that morning. He had got up and asked me if I was okay. And I told him, yes, I'm okay. And he went back to bed. He said, I'm going back to bed. And okay. And then after that, he went to bed. And I went back to sleep. And that morning, I got up and I go walking every morning. And so I got up around about 6 o'clock, and I leave the house around about 6:25 to be to the park at 6:30. So I go do my walking, and then I come back home, and I sat on my front porch reading my devotion, and Zelig came out. And Zelig said, "Good morning. How did you sleep last night?" I said, "I slept well." I said, "Well, good morning to you. How you slept last night?" He said, I slept good. I said, "Okay, great." I said, let me see that photo shot you have in your hand." And he just looked at me and said something, but I didn't understand what he was saying. So he got in the vehicle and he left. And I didn't see him anymore. So until I got a call from this young lady named Camille saying that Zelig was in a crash. I said, "Well, Zelig just left me." And she said, "Well, it was a SOS. I didn't know what that was about, but she told me it was emergency contact that Zelig had on his phone, letting them know that something happened." So he went to three people in New York.
And he left the house at 9:52 that morning, and that alert came through about 10:10 that morning.
Mm-hmm.
So almost an hour later, the alert, and by the way, I should ask you, Mioka, that it wasn't just one person who got the alert. 3 of his friends got the alert, right, for the car crash?
Yes.
And did they all report back to you at the same time, Mioka?
I know they called Kathy. I don't think it was at the same time, but I know at least one of them she spoke with, and it was literally, I want to say, less than 20 minutes from when he left the house, because it was 9:52 a.m. before when he left, and then 10:10 a.m. is when that pin came through.
Kathy, it's something you said just a little earlier sort of stuck with me. He woke you up at about 2:30 in the morning to ask if you were okay. Is there something there, any detail that maybe police can mine, something on his phone? Maybe he got a text message from somebody and he was worried about his family. Like that seems odd. Or maybe tell me, is it not strange that he would wake you up at 2:30 in the morning to ask if you're okay?
Yeah, it was strange to me also.
Yes, we don't know the reason why. You might have heard that we said that we believe Zelig stopped taking his medication prior to him leaving. And I think that was one of the telltale signs for Kathy that something might be a little off. Even though he seemed fine that morning when he left. Yeah, just not sure.
That is an interesting piece as well, that he's on medication for mental wellness and had stopped taking it. What about the location? Does he frequent that trail? Is he a hiker? Does he go there for meditation or walks, or is that a strange place for the car to be found?
So he possibly had been there before, because as a family, we like walking trails, not hiking necessarily, but just walking trails in areas where you will find peace and serenity and can possibly just sit and, think, a little bit. So it was a surprise because we weren't familiar with the park or the trail, especially at that end of it. But it would be understood that he would go walking at a location like that.
Kathy, let me ask you this one last question. He put out a Facebook post looking for people who wanted to open up, like-minded men who wanted to open up, and said he had a biblical calling. Are the police looking at that for any clues as to who might have responded?
Well, really, I don't know.
I'll say that the police are looking at all of his social interactions, social media interactions, any phone interactions that they can find, any lead that would help us get some clarity, they're working through. Well, listen, if there's anything we can do, I hope that you get a resolution to this that is a positive one. He's so talented, and the pictures, he's just so lovely. And clearly he brought a lot of joy to people on that stage, certainly with those Hamilton pictures, you can just see it. Kathy Williams and Mayoka Corbett Jacobs, I want to also tell our audience, if they know anything and have any information about your loved one, Zelig Williams' whereabouts, let me give the information. It's the Richland County Sheriff's Department, and the phone number is 803-576-3000. You can also contact Crime Stoppers at crimes.com. And my thanks to both Kathy and Mayoka tonight. Still to come. People make statements in court every day. That's what courts are for. But they are not usually fashion statements, which I guess is just as well, since fashion statements don't count. But wow, they can be loud. It's too bad for the woman at the center of the so-called Cash App murder trial in San Francisco. That is Ashleigh Momeni. And she was back on the stand today, a witness for the prosecution. Kind of hard to tell. You'll get the details next. Okay, whoever they choose to play Ashleigh Momeni in the movie, that actress is going to have a lot to live up to. So far, at least, her appearances at her brother's murder trial have been more style than substance, and heavy on the style, saying a lot, because she is a key prosecution witness, or should I say she is a star witness, hence the star quality. She's giving Sophia Loren. Am I crazy? Is it me? I totally see it. Anyway, she's got the trademark sunglasses. She's got the designer fashions. She turns heads all the way from the sidewalk to the witness stand, where so far, at least, she has not said much to help the prosecutors convict her big brother. That brother, if you know by now, and I think you do, it's Nema Momeni. He is accused of murdering the founder of Cash App. That's Bob Lee. Happened in April of last year. Prosecutors say that Nema Momeni took a knife from his sister's kitchen and drove Bob Lee to a secluded place and then stabbed him. Crazy, right? The theory by the prosecutors is that Bob Lee, according to Nema, was responsible for the drugging and raping of his little sister. Not that he did it, but that he was responsible for the drugging and raping of his little sister, that star witness, Ashleigh. But Nema Momeni claims that Lee came after him in a drug-fueled rage and that he merely acted in self-defense. And what does Ashleigh say? Even presented with incriminating text messages between herself and her brother Nema from the night of the stabbing, she says she was on a cocktail of drugs and does not remember much of anything. This is where I stop and I bring in Amy Larson, a reporter with our NewsNation affiliate KRON. She was in the courtroom today. I don't know what it is. It feels like I'm watching a movie, Amy, whenever I see Ashleigh sweeping into the courthouse. And a lot of times you all have to stand there and wait for the court to, and I've watched her stand there with her giant black glasses and her fabulous hair and her expensive clothes. And I wonder if she's distracting to if she's as distracting to me, is she that distracting to jurors as well?
I'm not getting that impression. We had Khazar testifying for 6 hours today. She testified for the entire day. And every time I looked over at the jury, it looked like they were really focused, paying attention to the content of what she was saying. And the sunglasses come off. As soon as she goes into the courtroom, she has to sit there and tell the truth about what happened between her, Bob Lee, and her brother. It's important to remember that Khazar and Nema were the last 2 people with Bob Lee before his death. Her testimony is critical to the prosecution's case because she is the motive. She is what ties Nema Momeni and Bob Lee together. Otherwise, the lives of these 2 men would have never intersected.
So in the snippets that we've had pre-trial, we keep hearing that it seems like the narrative that the prosecution's narrative is that Nema Momeni was avenging his little sister's honor. And there's the little sister. But now we're hearing about this sort of raging drug-fueled parties. There's a big list, cocaine, GHB, LSD, nitrous oxide that Khazar says she was on. What is the narrative eventually going to be, though? What can she lend to either prosecutors or the defense? Because I hear they want to call her too.
Right. So she actually testified today. She admitted on the stand that she and her very wealthy plastic surgeon husband are paying for Nema Momeni's defense team. He has 5 defense attorneys, and she said, "We are paying for this." She did her very best in front of the jury to defend her brother, his character, saying that he is not the kind of guy who would ever attack someone with a knife under San Francisco's Bay Bridge. She did have a few jabs at Bob Lee's character. She said Lee could get aggressive, and she tried to always encourage Bob Lee to be the best version of himself, is what she told the jury. At that point, we had a surprising moment. Bob Lee's brother stormed out of the courtroom. He was so disgusted that Khazar would go up on the stand and say those things about the victim, Bob Lee. So far in the testimony, we're hearing all about these parties that led up to the homicide. And Khazar also testified she continued to use drugs and party even in the days after Bob Lee was allegedly murdered. She said she was in a drug haze, so her memory is not the best. A lot of times we hear her say, "I don't remember because I was under the influence of narcotics," but she is a San Francisco socialite. So it was normal behavior for her to be out and about, going to all kinds of parties around San Francisco. At one point, Bob Lee invited her to go with him to a Twitter after party. And Bob Lee was also partying. He was also, according to testimony, drinking and using cocaine right along with Khazar.
Well, I got to have you back because there's still so much more to the story. What about Khazar and her friend waking up naked and then, calling for help and suddenly Nema thinks it's Bob's fault and he's not even there. But I have to leave it there because I'm out of time tonight. But you got to come back. You're doing a great job of this. And I'm so thankful you're in the courtroom. Thank you for this. Really appreciate it, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Amy Larson joining us from KRON, our affiliate in San Francisco. Okay. Still to come, star witness in the Suitcase murder trial made an appearance in court. And I am not talking about this lady, the defendant, Sarah Boone. I am instead talking about the murder weapon, a suitcase. The suitcase where her boyfriend gasped for breath and suffocated. And now, as it turns out, there may have been a whole other level of torture that George Torres was enduring while zipped into that tiny bag. And it has to do with a baseball bat. That came out in court, too. I'm going to show it all to you next. Well, Suitcase murder case has always been about 2 things. One is Sarah Boone, the defendant, and the other is the suitcase. And while we and presumably the jury keep on hoping that Boone is going to take the stand, as her lawyer has promised, The next best thing has now made an appearance in court, and it is that battered, zippered suitcase that became George Torres's tiny and cramped coffin. A forensic biologist put on those gloves, opened up the box. This is an alleged murder weapon, folks. Brought it out right in front of the jury, and it allowed all of those jurors to see just how small and claustrophobic that suitcase really was. She did the same thing when it came to the 2 bottles of wine that Boone and her boyfriend, George Torres, supposedly emptied that night. And she also brought out something else, a baseball bat. The bat was found near the suitcase, and the state is now alleging that Boone beat on that suitcase with the bat after Torres was zipped inside. Remember, it's soft-sided suitcase. We knew that the medical examiner found bruises on Torres' shoulder and his skull and his forehead and had a cut on his lip, but we didn't know until now what allegedly had actually caused those bruises. The jurors also got to hear for the first time from the other man in Sarah Boone's life, her ex-husband, Brian Boone, father of her son. You might have caught a glimpse of him on that body cam, police body cam. This is the morning after George's death. That ex-husband was the first person Sarah called, and here's something, here's a little piece of what he said on the stand.
And when you actually got in touch with her, what did she tell you on the phone?
That George was dead, and if I would come over.
Did she say what happened to him?
I don't remember if she told me then on the phone or when I got there, but she told me they had been playing hide and seek and that she fell asleep.
So that ex-husband also testified that he had to tell Sarah to call 911 3 times before she actually finally did it. I want to bring in Dave Ehrenberg here. He's the state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, friend of the show. Okay, Dave, she is already so unlikable. Like so unlikable when you watch that video of her taunting a man who cannot breathe, begging for his life, right? But now you bring in the picture of her taking a baseball bat, allegedly, to this soft-sided suitcase that he's in and torturing him even further. I feel like this is, and I don't mean this to be trite, a nail in her coffin. I feel like she's finished with this.
Agreed. She clearly was the aggressor here, and the baseball bat is just additional evidence. But the main evidence here is at her own hand, recording everything that happened on her own cell phone. It exposed her as a killer, exposed her as a liar because she denied anything and everything until she was caught with her own video. And now you've got evidence of bruises and damage to the victim's scalp and head because of a baseball bat as she's whacking this soft-sided suitcase. So this is why when she takes a stand, 'cause she's going to have to because she's claiming self-defense, it makes a mockery of everything because she's been the aggressor from the beginning, and the evidence clearly points that out.
You know, real quickly, I just keep wondering why it's only second-degree murder, why there's no additional charges of torture or kidnapping or anything. Like, why is that?
Second-degree murder is punishable up to life in prison. That's much more a serious charge than kidnapping, but also it wouldn't fill the elements of kidnapping. Second-degree murder may not even work in this case because she was drunk at the time, and so that may make this a manslaughter case. We'll see. I think the jury is going to really hate her on the stand, and then she may indeed get second-degree murder.
So go back to the kidnapping. I only have 10 seconds here, but go back to the kidnapping because O.J. Simpson was convicted of kidnapping because he moved some people from one side of a hotel room to another side of a hotel room. How is that not considered kidnapping when you absolutely prevent the movement of someone?
Well, she and he both agreed to go in the suitcase, and they were playing a drunken game of hide and seek, and then she wouldn't let him out. I wouldn't consider that kidnapping. I consider that murder.
Yeah, I consider it both. I can't stand this girl. Just seeing her on that videotape. I'm always about, benefit of the doubt, but just seeing how she taunted a man who was, and you could hear him. That's the other thing. You could hear how he couldn't expand his lungs to even say the word Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. And I could feel it because I remember my brothers sitting on me when I was a kid, and I felt that same thing. So, Dave, you'll have to come back. We'll have to talk more about this as we see more evidence. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
All right, coming up next, folks, they just keep getting younger, but we did not expect them to be this young. Another raft of lawsuits was just filed against P. Diddy, and one of the alleged victims let's just say, was not old enough to even be in high school. Her age and the details next. It seems like we can't go a few days without a brand new raft of sex assault lawsuits filed against P. Diddy. And tonight, 5 more. But one of the accusers really stands out in the latest batch. That's because she says she was just 13 when Diddy drugged and raped her at a house party in the year 2000. She's listed as Jane Doe and says that on the night of the attack, she was dropped off by a friend at Radio City Music Hall in New York to attend the MTV Music Awards. 13 years old, didn't have a ticket, didn't matter. She says she was determined to go to an after party. And lo and behold, she met P. Diddy's limo driver, she says. And she says that driver told her that she was, quote, she fit what Diddy was looking for, end quote, and invited her to Sean Combs', quote, large white home, end quote. Once inside, she claims that she signed a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, and saw several people around the party snorting cocaine. Then she says she was given a reddish yellow drink and began to feel disoriented after she drank it and sought out a bedroom so that she could lie down. And that's when she says that Diddy and 2 other celebrities, a male and a female, raped her. She says the male celebrity ripped off her clothes and raped her while the female celebrity watched. And then she claims Diddy also assaulted her while the other 2 watched. Eventually, she says she was able to escape and get help at a nearby gas station. We should say that Diddy's attorney has responded to this and says, quote, Mr. Combs has never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. But the hits keep coming, and they are not the hits that P. Diddy has grown accustomed to in his life. Tomorrow, you know how we keep talking about in the Delphi case, Abby and Libby? Libby was found naked and Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes, and they were both dead. We keep wondering what that is. What's the theory there? And we have a homicide prosecutor who literally wrote the book of murder on the show. So come back tomorrow. Meantime, stick around for Cuomo. He's next.
Hey, Chris Cuomo here. Happy Monday. Welcome to NewsNation. How about I serve up a little fast food for thought? Keying, of course, off former President Trump's foray into French fries.
If you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Absolutely.
We'll keep it tight. We got the salt on it. Never touches the human hand.
Very good.
Nice and full. How many would you put in a bag like this? Like 6, you could? 6 mediums?
5 is fine.
But I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like